These women had a very sanguine glow. As articles in Forbes, Newsweek, and Time were indicating, Chinese women were at the top of their game. They represented the highest percentage of self-made female billionaires in the world. And with 63% of GMAT takers in China being female, they were attaining MBAs with a ferocity that was making the boys blush. According to National Bureau of Statistics reports, 71% of Chinese women between the ages of 18 and 64 were employed, and they accounted for 44% of the country's workforce. The first one would soon be sent into space. From what I could see, this was all true. Professionally, these women were so tenaciously pushing the limits of what was possible for their half of the sky, as far as I was concerned, they were all astronauts. Yet personally, and when it came to matters of the heart in particular, they appeared beholden to the playbook of another galaxy, a distant, anachronistic realm that seemed straight out of a Jane Austen novel. Much to my surprise, the recurring topic of our conversations quickly became marriage. They spoke of it as one might speak of an ingrown toenail, with urgency, a niggling element of pain, and the full knowledge that if it wasn't addressed in the imminent future, things would only get worse. Sensing that something wasn't adding up, I began to do some digging beyond the scope of my newsroom comrades. 3 years and several hundred interviews later, my curiosity has led me to understand the story of China's rise and development under a radically new lens. It's a story that begins with an impoverished communist nation where marriage was universal, compulsory, and a woman's only means to livelihood. Fast forward 30-plus years to an urbanized, globalized, economic superpower where marriage is swiftly becoming more discretionary and an institution that increasing numbers of educated women are committing to only after developing themselves and their careers a bit more fully, if they're committing at all. Factor in the aftershocks of a nation still reeling from an onerous one-child policy that has saddled it with a walloping gender imbalance, and the plates in this wildly tectonic shift of social, economic, and demographic proportions begin to take shape. Central to this shift is the idea that despite China's dazzling superlatives, there are strands of its culture that remain inextricably rooted in tradition, the most significant and inexorable of which is the societal pressure to wed. Although this pressure exists in varying degrees across many cultures and religions, it is particularly strong in China, where marriage retains the equivalent social force of a steamroller. This force makes it so that marrying off a child is the mission of just about every parent with offspring under the age of 30. After 30, the mission becomes a crusade. In most cases, parents mean well. They genuinely believe that the best thing for their children is to assure that they are dutifully snuggled into wedlock as swiftly as possible. But there is a formidable cultural disconnect between progenitors, who were raised through poverty and revolution, and their progeny, who grew up through an economic boom and the birth of the individual in an otherwise fiercely collectivist society. This cultural disconnect is the essence of the infinitely textured and complex set of sparring values, obligations, traditions, and tensions that define modern China, where, like the perennial wind chime, changes in marriage policies and patterns have heralded the most significant shifts in China's socio-political climate. This has been true for the past 5,000 years, a time during which, it's critical to note, marriage has been the cornerstone and pinnacle of a woman's life. In the span of just over 30 years, all of that has changed. For women especially, marriage has become less of an imperative, largely because of the unprecedented educational and professional opportunities that accompany China's reforms, beginning in 1979. Elements of this evolution will surely sound familiar in the Western world, where women were once meant to be seen, in the kitchen, and not heard, in the workplace, though there are a few salient factors that make the situation in China especially alarming. Of greatest significance are the more than 30 million female abortions and infanticides which occurred during the peak years of the one-child policy and have resulted in a surplus of poor, uneducated, rural males who are doomed to remain without a bride because there are simply not enough women in China to marry. On the other side of that potential demographic disaster are urban-only daughters, women whose parents chose to allow a daughter into the world during a time when everyone else wanted a son. These are women who, for lack of competing XY chromosomes in the family, were given